So this is like a huge identity like dive for me. I am half Lebanese, Middle Eastern, but totally like identify as white and pass as white and enjoy all the privileges that affords. And then I did my 23andMe, and then I had a fateful conversation with somebody who works at ArtsWave, and it just sort of like fell into place. And I was like, wow, this is a really important part of my identity and part of my family's story. My grandparents just wanted to live the American dream and did not teach me the language and, did not honestly tell me much of the stories either. So I've been talking to my dad. And so I almost just see it as like sort of paying back a little bit for like my great-grandparents and my grandparents' hard work and a chance to amplify voices of a whole community here that I think people don't think about. People think about Cincinnati as really black and white. So yeah, I was just like really excited for the chance to see what would happen.
What if this is all just a dream?
My name is Rowan Salem. I am originally from Massachusetts outside of Boston. I currently live in Cincinnati. I'm a modern dance choreographer, performer, and educator, and my project is Viewpoints Embodied. It's a series of 4 dance films inspired by interviews with Cincinnati residents of Middle Eastern descent. So the 4 films in this series are a series of interviews with Cincinnati residents of Middle Eastern descent. I am a modern dance choreographer, and I sometimes work in dance film, but this was like kind of my deepest dive into dance film. So I was curious about bringing these two, or using stories like this and using it as the audio backdrop, and then layering my movement on top of that. And so I found 4 people in the community with very different perspectives and backgrounds to share 4 different topics. The 4 films. Leah introduces Islam as almost like an educational 5-minute lesson to anyone who is not familiar with Islam. I think there's a lot of misconception about that religion in this country, a lot of post 9/11 Islamophobia. So I was really excited about that. I learned a lot just by talking with her. We spoke for an hour and I had a hard time cutting it down. I just learned so much, and I think it was a really beautiful topic to work with. And then Kate Zaidan owns Dean's Mediterranean Imports in Findlay Market. So Kate speaks about the principles behind Lebanese cuisine, and just in a beautiful, eloquent way. She's very practiced in this, it seems. So we danced in her shop in the aisles. And then Noelle Magathi is a Palestinian-American performance artist and visual artist. So I kind of introduced their philosophy of why they work with that topic. And then we use one of the pieces, a candle in the shape of a fence, representing borders in Palestine, and just use that as our movement inspiration. And the last film is Iyad Korki. He is a pediatric nephrology fellow at Cincinnati Children's, and he just speaks about the differences in the medical system in the Middle East and America, because he trained in both places, and kind of the pros and cons of the fact that we have such amazing resources here. So 4 very different topics. The creative process for each film was very different depending on the interview. So I did the interview first for everybody, and then I have a big postmodern dance influence, which really emphasizes the creative process. The idea is that you don't go into the process already knowing what's going to happen. You kind of engage with the concept, and the dancers are very collaborative in postmodern work. So we all engage in this sort of question together or topic, and then the creative process teaches us. So often, so I use a lot of compositional improvisation. So I will give the dancers like a set of rules or a task. Like you have to get from here to there, and here are the rules. Like you can roll down the wall, you can't use your arms, or you're going to flock each other. So whoever's in front, you're going to follow them. And then when you feel it's right, change the flock to the person in back or something like that. And so, yes, the interviews inspired the creative process. I do not do a ton of planning ahead of time. Well, I try to do just enough. So in terms of film editing and dance film, I am kind of new to this world, and this grant was an incredible opportunity for me to dive in, and I realized I want to learn a lot more. But I think the two films, Eod and Leah, are a little more highly edited, like post in the film itself, because the camera is stationary in those scenarios, and so I kind of use that like opportunity that I can like splice the scene or like fade them in and out. And then in Kate in the grocery store, the camera is moving, and it's a dancer itself. So like that, we did a lot of really long takes with that. So yeah, just like very different choices and styles, I guess. For Noelle's film, we were really in the dark, and I had a couple of volunteers light the dancers with flashlights. And I mean, this is a big learning curve for me, is like, then I have actually no idea how the footage is going to come out in the end. And so that was like the most challenging one to edit, but it was totally unexpected result of, by using the flashlights to light the dancers in the space, they kind of, individual body parts disappeared and appeared in a way that was surprisingly effective. But the darkness was challenging. I was interested in exploring this project as a film project rather than a live performance, because I was interested in working with different environments. So like letting the forest inspire our movement, or letting the cement like alleyway define the vibe of the piece. I think I was just really interested in like that site-specific type of work. As a recipient of the ArtsWave Black and Brown grant program, so this is like a huge identity like dive for me. I am half Lebanese, Middle Eastern, but totally like identify as white and pass as white and enjoy all the privileges that affords. And then I did my 23andMe, and then I had a fateful conversation with somebody who works at ArtsWave, and it just sort of like fell into place. And I was like, wow, this is a really important part of my identity and part of my family's story. My grandparents just wanted to live the American dream and did not teach me the language, and, you know, did not honestly tell me much of the stories either. So I've been talking to my dad. And so I almost just see it as like sort of paying back a little bit for like my great-grandparents and my grandparents' hard work, and a chance to amplify voices of a whole community here that I think people don't think about. People think about Cincinnati as really black and white. So yeah, I was just like really excited for the chance to see what would happen. So before I received the grant, I was already gathering the idea of including neighborhood stories in some way. I just think like dance is so isolated most of the time. Like I actually don't enjoy going to a proscenium theater and watching modern dance. I think it's really kind of moving beyond that point. And so I'm always interested in like collaborating or like cross collaboration basically. And so it just kind of fell together at the perfect time. I wasn't sure like what people I wanted to interview or whatever, and then it just fell into place. I studied dance film in grad school, but this was the first like true experiment of putting it out into the world. Process of finding these interviewees was very difficult for me because I am not entrenched in the community. I don't go to like church or anything. I have a neighbor across the street from Syria, and she insisted that her story was not interesting enough. And I begged her, and I still haven't got her interview, but maybe I will. But yeah, cold emailing and cold calling is difficult. I mean, people are maybe skeptical of what I'm trying to do, which is totally understandable. It took me a while to find my interviewees, except Kate is my friend. We met at a mom's stroller workout group. The participants have all watched the films. I edited down our interviews a lot. And I mean, I spoke to each of them for like an hour, and the films are 5 minutes. And I was really nervous about how I was portraying their stories. And so each of the conversations with each of them was a little bit different, but I made sure to get their blessings before, like, because it is so highly edited and there's so much I could have included. So I made sure to get each of their blessings before I published them. Yeah, I got positive feedback from the participants about the films, especially Leah, who spoke about Islam, our dance in the field. I think that I hadn't spoken to her about what the plan was, and just the whole nature topic was kind of unexpected to her, and she found that to be a really beautiful interpretation. I see my work fitting into the truth and healing theme as kind of opening our eyes to the diversity here in the city a little bit more. Like I said, I feel like people have a strong view that Cincinnati is black and white, but there's just so much. So just telling people stories, even though it's only 4 people, it's like a small thing to do, but I feel like in terms of healing, I mean, post 9/11 Islamophobia and anti-Arab sentiment and all around and everything like that. So like any chance to just humanize human beings is a good thing. Yeah, what was really revealed to me through my project was the power of telling simple stories and listening to people's voices. And all 4 of my participants felt like very self-conscious, that their perspectives was very normal, everyday, nothing profound. But the grant allowed the time and resources to just put our energy towards this one person for this amount of time. And it is really powerful. So I feel like I'm inspired by that. My truth that is expressed through my project is that movement is a universal human experience. And so my dancers might not have everything in common with what the interview speaks about, but it's kind of highlighting that shared humanity. If viewers could take away one thing from my project or this conversation, it is that movement can teach us new things that we don't already know. The most challenging part of this project was doing justice to some of the stories, or the fear that we would impose ourselves in something we don't fully understand. So Noelle's piece is about borders in Palestine and people suffering, and we like sat around and watched news stories and read articles and felt like we were just scratching the surface. So that we were trying to question ourselves along the way, like, are we doing justice to this, or are we taking advantage of somebody's story? And so we just had to keep asking the questions and eventually just step into it and trust. The most rewarding part of this process was a lot of the sort of final outcome was in my mind, and the dancers couldn't necessarily visualize like what was going to happen. So when they're dancing in the fields, I know they're going to be like fading in and out of this beautiful scene, but they can't see what I'm seeing behind the camera. They can't see what I have in my mind. And so kind of like the validation of them enjoying the final process and kind of realizing with me that we're like seeing all 4 films together. It's a very powerful experience. When the creative process actually comes together and does what you want it to do, it's rewarding. I have a 3-year-old and another one on the way. And I think just like talking about all of our history as much as we can is so important because it gets lost so easily. I mean, my grandparents just wanted to Americanize and they did not share languages with me or many stories. And so I'm trying to like go back and yeah, I guess as much as I can share with them, I will. If people want to see the films, they will live at viewpointsembodied.com.